Call this meeting to order with the pledge of the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pauletta Frias. Scott Latham.
Here.
Thomas Grattan.
Here.
Thomas Kennedy.
Here.
Brian Tobin.
Here.
In the event of an emergency, all visitors are advised that they may exit this room from the one side door which leads directly into the parking lot. In the event of an emergency, do not attempt to leave in your automobile since this may block incoming emergency vehicles. Thank you.
Okay, budget presentation. Chuck, take it away. Noting that we do not have a state budget.
Right, yeah, last I heard, I know that both houses are gonna, I think they were supposed to be out on vacation, but I think they're coming back tomorrow, but again, no word. They approved
Both houses have put
budget.
their proposed budget up. The governor has not. They say there's some sticking points. Our Superintendent's Association shared with us that there are absolute sticking points. None of them have to do with education. They more have to do with there's a lot of stuff in the state budget, and I don't recall off the top of my head what they were, but none of them were educational-related issues. The one sticking point in education was cell phones, and it seems that they've ironed out what that was. So the governor made a statement 3 or 4 days ago saying you'll have a budget before you need it. We take that as before May 20th, but ideally we'll all be adopted by then. Now, in our situation, we have different flexibility than many other places do with our budget because we were so close to balance from the beginning. And we'll share that as we go. But ideally we'll have it. If we don't have it, we'll do exactly what we've done in other years. We'll pivot.
And these numbers change.
Okay, just some highlights for the proposed 25-26 budget. So we're looking at a budget-to-budget increase of 3.18%. So that carries a tax levy increase of 2.75%. We are allowed, based on the calculation, to go up to a 3% increase. Again, we decided to try and be as responsible as possible and make it as lean of a budget as possible. And again, so we're under the budget tax cap. And again, that just relates to the tax levy, which is a big chunk of the revenue budget, but not all the budget. So that's why the difference between 2.75 and 3.18. This budget maintains all programs and opportunities. And in the revenue budget, we are giving back reserves and appropriated fund balance of $1,065,000. So as the earlier presentations we go through, we were funded in reserves that we're allowed to based on the comptroller and the SCD. And in good times, we use money, we fund those reserves, and again, in these budgets going forward, we use those as a revenue source, again, to alleviate so we don't have to go out for an increased tax levy to the public.
And again, this is all pending on when we get a budget. That number could drop, pending budget and also pending retirements and salaries and different things like that. So there are still some areas that may be shifted around. Our overall budget don't change. Just exactly how we fund it might change slightly, and how much comes out of reserves could vary. If the state budget comes back and it's higher, which is the anticipated proposal from the houses, then that number will go down, because we'll get more state aid and we'll use less out of our reserves. If when we hire an elementary principal, there's a $30,000 difference, then we can remove that from our salary line, and that would change this number also. So that is all pending when the budget comes through and things that are going to happen between now and the end of the school year. But it's a very minimal amount. The 275 will be there. And that's the number that we'll be voting. The overall 35 million will be the number we'll be voting on. These are repeats from what you guys saw in the last couple of
Yeah, so that's right. So last year, we did tweak the budgets from last presentation. And again, tonight is an interesting, we are looking to adopt the budget because the The next budget is a day late compared to when we're required to, so we're doing it a little earlier, whereas tonight normally we would do more detailed updated slides, but again, because of the timing, tonight is looking to have the budget adopted. So, right, the left side is the 24-25, the current year's budget in some of the major categories. The 25-26 proposed budgets to the right. As discussed with Dr. Morrow, the state aid number, the $2,092,000, that is estimated based on the last numbers. We do hope we have more. If you go down a little bit more, fund balance and reserves, as I mentioned, the $1,065,000, that number is what we had to raise to kind of balance the budget. And again, if we get more state aid, most likely we look at the reserves, we'll look at our expense budget. And again, this to what we feel is a good responsible budget from the revenue side. Most of the revenues, you can see, they're fairly straightforward from one to another. I always like to kind of just remind every time I can with the pilot money towards the bottom, the $188,000. That's money we don't necessarily know how long it's going to last. We don't know a lot of the details. We do know when that money came onto the budget a couple of years ago, there was a drop in the tax rate. And when it comes off, potentially there will be a little bit of a spike, a bump in the tax rate. We're going to look at that and try and even it out. We get the money early, a year before it's used. So again, hopefully we can do it over 2 years. But again, it's something that's not ideal from budget purposes to try and keep the tax levy nice and relatively flat. But again, I just always like to remind everybody. Again, it's fairly straightforward. Any questions on this slide?
What is our enrollment in the district?
I haven't looked lately. Is it 6?
658
Yeah.
was the last that I saw.
Is that the number that the state uses, like, in comparison for the budgeting? I know, isn't there a kind of take a snapshot?
Our enrollment has come down significantly. I think I remember when I gave all enrollment numbers for the last 20 years, we were at 1,100. We have, our smallest grades now are just into the high school, so we have a couple more years where we shrink. Our elementary has shrunk already by a couple hundred kids. We used to have 30 sections in the elementary school, we have 24 now, so 6 less sections. We were very lucky, we've only accessed one teacher. In shrinking, we've only accessed one teacher because of retirements, and because we used a lot of overages here. So yes, the decrease in enrollment, does impact our budget some. When you're going up in enrollment and your budget doesn't go up a lot, then it's significantly harder to fund your district. When you're going down in enrollment, and your budget stays similar or goes up a couple percent, it's easier to meet some of these 8% increases that you have with healthcare and these different things that are more expensive. Does that answer the question, you guys?
It does. We haven't had a registration for kindergarten yet for next year.
We don't, but I can tell you there's, it's not done, but it's right around 30 already, which is higher than the current kindergarten we have now. And that's people that have actually fully registered. And then there's, we're going to be anticipating between 30 and 40. And we have less than that in kindergarten now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Again, this is one slide on the expenditure budget, a summary. And you see for the proposed budget in the middle, towards the bottom, at the bottom, is the total budget for 25-26 for the proposal is the $35,629,000, and that carries that 3.18%. This year we mentioned earlier, but again, we certain the big items. The BOCES went up 7.95%. A lot of that's the kind of a reclassing between codes instead of doing contractual, going more towards BOCES. The benefits are something we keep an eye on. That the health insurance went up 7%. Again, we were able to kind of make sure we have to kind of budget a little bit for any kind of switch between single and family and so forth. But we had some flexibility in benefits. And again, anywhere where we don't feel the need, out of district tuition, something we will look at, that number could go up and down very quickly. But again, we feel we have enough where there's a contingent of 2 in there, so we can just be careful. Again, that's just something that can pop up any time. Any questions with the expenditure budget?
Out-of-district tuition going down almost 10% or 9%. We still have contingencies in case we have a late enrollment
Yes.
of a high needs.
Yeah, we've been keeping, I know, when I started 10 years ago, we had almost more, double probably the kids we have in out-of-district tuition, and each year, not that you would ever hope, or but it's just, we've been very lucky. And
Lisa did a great job bringing kids, creating programs to bring them back.
Exactly, so we're very active, and again, it pays. You can see here, again, it is a tricky line, and it's something it's like I said, you can have a family move in, you never know.
Yeah.
But we feel confident that we do have enough money in that code to carry us.
We have more special ed programs, like we have 3 self-contained in the elementary and a life skills and a self-contained up here. And that didn't exist in Southold 10, 15 years ago. So a lot of those kids were being sent out, so it cost you a lot more money to send them out. Some of that is just the rise in need all over Long Island. You know, the percentages of special ed students on Long Island are about 13 to 14% higher than they were. They ran between 13 and 16. They're closer to 24 to 30 now. All over Long Island, and ours are no different. Ours are very similar increases with our numbers. What Lisa has done is created programs where they're here. Not only do we service our own kids that would typically cost us between $50,000 and $100,000 to transport and send out, we also have probably 5 or 6 students that are tuitioned into our programs, both here and in the high school and down the elementary from Shelter Island and Greenport, and some of the surrounding districts that don't necessarily have those programs. It's hard to maintain all of those programs in really small districts. You know, so we have Shelter Island and Greenport right now, tuitioned in, correct?
And New Suffolk.
And New Suffolk, yeah. So we have a handful of kids that are tuitioned in for special needs. Prior to New Suffolk Elementary coming here, we had New Suffolk Elementary students in our special needs program also tuitioned in. So that does generates revenue and it balances off some of that. You know, the biggest difference is that we have a couple less kids in residential placement than we used to. So we have contingency in case we have students come. And then we have kids in residential, and then we have kids in BOCES, and then we also have our own programs.
So again, the estimated tax billing based on this proposed budget. With the average house assessed at $7,000, the estimated tax increase is $187 for a year, or $16 per month. There is several different categories, whatever based the properties based on, but if you want to calculate yourself, it's 99.662 for every $100 of assessed valuation. And the estimated increase is about 2.672 per $100 of assessed valuation. And again, I used to kind of put all the different evaluations, and again, just, hey, there was too many, not enough room on the slide. But like I said, if you want to calculate it.
I'm not really sure what an assessed valuation is. The top line is the easiest to understand. It's this increase for this particular tax, and that's what your monthly would be.
Right. And the key to the last bullet is key to note that I based all these numbers based on the assessed valuation as of now. And when the tax bills go out next year, it is based on different assessed valuations. I know historically, I would say 9 out of 10 years, the amount that we propose, the actual number is less because the valuation goes up a little bit each year. But again, there's no guarantees. So again, I use it based on the information I have now. I do contact the Southold town and mention if there's any kind of large variation or any kind of change from next year, and they said they don't see anything big making any changes. So like I said, I use that evaluation as of now. Because that's the best number we have. And
So, just a question.
Yeah.
The $35 million number, and then dividing it by our enrollment, it's 54,147 per pupil. I mean, I don't know if I'm doing that number correct. That's
right.
increasing. You know, and comparatively to the other districts locally, and then across the island and the state, This is a substantial difference that we see here in Southold. Why does it cost us more than our neighbors to educate our children? Cutchogue, and then also Greenport. They're our neighbors.
Okay.
So,
So I don't know what their budgets are, what their enrollment is. I know Cutchogue's budget is higher than ours, and their enrollment is only about 150, 200 kids more than ours now. They're under 1,000. But I don't know their numbers off the top of my head. You know, I do know that there are some unique, there's unique challenges to educating kids on the east end of Long Island. You know, when we have kids that have to go to BOCES, on top of going to BOCES, we're paying about $5,000 a month for a student bus to go there. You know, so not only do we have the BOCES tuition, we have another large amount. You know, if we're using a whole bus, it's significantly cheaper, but we're not large enough to use a whole bus. So we end up paying in ways that it can be a little more expensive than if you live in the same neighborhood as where, you know, my prior district, we had Sequoia in our district. You know, so our buses could drop them off. We didn't even have to use buses, BOCES transportation. So, you know, there was no increase in that. That lowered it 30 grand per kid, or whatever it was, you know. So there are some unique challenges. But to say whether it's higher or lower than the other districts, I would need to see what their numbers are. I don't have them. I didn't do them, but I can do them for you and send them to you.
well, like looking historically, like the last time I see numbers from the state was when you offer their website was 22, 23, and that's when we're at $43,000 per pupil, according to what was reported to the state. Greenport was 26, Cutchogue was 36, you know.
But are they doing it the same way? Are they just taking the budget and dividing by the enrollment? Because, you know, if you have a school that we used to have 1,000 kids in, and now we have 500 kids, the school didn't get any smaller, so you're still cleaning a school for 1,000 and.
I don't know the equation to figure out the per pupil spending. You know, I don't know if it's as easy as just divide the total spending by the number of kids. I've not done that. But we can look into it for you and find out. I don't have an answer for it. I didn't know the question was going to be asked, so I didn't bring it as part of the presentation.
I mean, I will say, to me, that the smaller the district, typically if you look at the range of all the, going from the per pupil down, the smaller districts, because it's just not cost effective, the largest districts, the Sachems, you know, the Connecticuts, they have large, you know, buildings, and they can kind of handle and absorb a lot of the cost. I know Greenport saves money because they have one building. I know from working there, it is a factor where it's more expensive to run two buildings with that case. I know that the big thing that we're seeing is just the enrollment drop. You know, when you lose a couple of kids in each grade, you don't really see any kind of change in that. We're not, you know, I think what you have to compare also is class size. I think our class size, you know, larger school districts, they'll have much larger class sizes. They could be more efficient and, you know, keep that cost down. Where we typically, we can't really do too much if you have a drop of 2 kids in a grade. So I think that's the big factor that it's because our enrollment's dropping. But each district, everything, there's a lot of, you know, things that are same and also a lot of things that are different.
I think it's an easy calculation. I just don't think it's a fair calculation.
It is a fairly basic calculation. It is basically budgets versus, you know, the enrollment. You know, you had mentioned with the enrollment, just to make sure, because what's interesting is that, I don't know if it's interesting, but to me, a lot of the state aid, the numbers, there's a 1-year lag. So basically, they look at a lot of the enrollment on beds day, the numbers that I look at. So that's roughly early October, and that affects the following year's aid. So there's always a 1-year lag. So if you see a certain number drop right now, nothing takes effect until next year, because right now we're still based on numbers from last year. So. But yeah, to me, we're just mainly concerned. We try and, you know, our taxpayers are very supportive, so we always try and keep the tax levy as low as possible, keep expenditures as low as possible, and just try to maximize the revenues as best we can. You know, as a purchasing agent, I know I look at every $10 item to make sure I still require quotes if they're not using a contract. revenues are always trying to make sure the building goes out, timely and stuff. So, I know we do our best to try and keep the taxes as low as possible.
It's an easy calculation, it's a hard comparison. It's not, it's hard, challenging in comparison to even the neighboring districts. Like you said, Greenport has one building, we have two.
That is a factor that was, that it does help keep their cost a little low. But there's other, what do they pay their teachers? What do they pay? Their enrollment's been steady. So there's a lot of different things. You'll be interested in seeing what's going on with Manitowoc again, because they've been seeing the same drop. And they have probably 2 buildings, 3. So I'll look at
I bet you by that calculation, Cutchogue Matatuck has either caught us or passed us in if you just take budget divided by enrollment. Because their enrollment drop, I believe, has been a lot more steep than ours has. It's still greater, they have greater total population, but the rate of drop has been greater than ours.
I can try to get the numbers and try to get answers for you. And there are definitely unique challenges. We have AP classes with 7 kids there. Because if we don't offer the AP class, we can't compete with all of the high schools on Long Island. But we only have 35 kids in a grade level. The percentage of kids taking AP is as high or higher than other places, but it's still 7, it's 1/5. So it's 20%. In a district like, say, Longwood, that would be 10 AP classes if you were taking 20% of their population. Well, we could either not offer those things, or we're going to have a class of 7. Well, when you have 7 in a class, it's going to be significantly more expensive for that teacher than it is when you have, than when you have 27 in a class. So that is some of it. Our location is some of it. The fact that we offer a myriad of programs straight through that we want to offer, this community supports and offerings so that kids have opportunities not just for college, but for career afterwards. It's expensive to do some of those things, but I can try to get answers for you. I don't have them off the top of my head, but I can try to look at our neighboring districts. There's never apples to apples, but I don't know what their numbers are. And I don't know how they're calculated through the state. So I mean, using a simple calculation like you just did, I can figure out once people propose their budgets, what the number is and share that with you, and then give you some of those unique things that we manage and deal with differently because of where we are and because of our size. I'll be happy to do that for you. I just don't have it. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Thanks. I mean, often we do. I mean, I asked these questions before I came on the board when it was $41,000, and we do hear programs, opportunities, and electives, but we had a speaker last time, Mr. Buckley, mentioned in the elementary school, he hadn't seen change. And then we asked him to be the change agent, to spark that conversation down there. Is it that there's the changes all here in the high school, and we're not seeing the same opportunity presented at the elementary school? But the answer is always it's programs, the uniqueness of where we are. But like I said, then we look to other districts and, like you said, how they get to that final number. It's just 41 to 54 in 3 or 4 years is a substantial jump. And yes, the economy.
I would chalk that up to a lot, salary and benefits,
Yeah, I'll be happy to get you.
Healthcare is skyrocketing.
I don't think that the change is just here in the high school. There are numerous different things that the elementary principals shared with me that have started in the last 5 years down there. I know that there's debate on whether they're good or bad or how they work or whatever it may be. Like the coding classes and the bots that we use down there, and
$1 million
all sorts of different
between the
things.
top 2 lines.
Going to Broadway shows.
Half the expenditure list is stuff that's beyond our
that
control.
Group that's down there, they just went
This is the
last
stuff.
weekend. So there are different things that are going on. I don't know if categorizing it as there's no change there is accurate. I certainly wouldn't categorize it that way. But if you want me to quantify it and get all those things, I'll be happy to share that, in an update. I can get them and share them in one of our future updates.
Or, I mean, and at a meeting, I mean, it's heard here and it could be, reshared on the Soho broadcast, so. Thanks.
Soon I held it's called a report card for the budget documents. I'm putting that together in the next couple of days, so that's going to be available. But that talks about spending per pupil in there, among other things, class sizes. So it's a good document. Again, you have to look at, because it's interesting, again, like the 23-24 year that ended in June, that number hasn't been final till now. So again, it's a lag, so it's behind, but then that's based on some real numbers. So that's what a lot of that report card is, so.
Did we lose 50 kids after COVID? The kids that came out, we had the bump during COVID, and then 22, 23, or 21, 22. I remember getting the presentation here, and I was shocked that there might have been 40 or 50 kids that, and it was mostly elementary kids, so it was probably kids that came out for the pandemic. All right, we're going back to wherever, but that's going to have an effect on
Yeah.
us.
We had some that came out during the pandemic and they went back.
Yeah.
And then we had others that came out during the pandemic and stayed.
Yeah. Well, I just remember on the chart, there was a significant year-to-year over year drop, and I just figured myself it was all right, the COVID's over, we can go back to wherever we didn't want to be during COVID.
Will the report card be posted on the district website for the, where's that information?
It's mailed to everybody, doesn't it?
It gets mailed? Yeah, it's part of the budget pack. But can it also go, I mean, we're trying to go electronic with a lot of documents. So do you typically put it on the website?
I do, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, okay, ask a question on that.
Yeah, how about it?
Yeah, go ahead. It's his choice.
So I was just at the elementary school, right, for the science fair. And I walked over, I saw this Parma, and they had a 3D printer. And I asked her, because I've never seen this before. And she said, yeah, we have this in the elementary school. And I said, yeah, so when do you use it? She says, well, we use it with a couple kids before school. Now, apparently you have this, but only a couple kids are using it in their school. And I don't understand why that makes any sense. If we have this, why are we not using it with the kids?
I don't know how they use it.
I didn't know that.
I mean, she subs every day, elementary, doesn't even know we have it over there.
I've seen it because I've been meetings in that cafe. over
Yeah,
there.
it's an awesome.
Not the cafe, around the corner.
Yeah.
It's in.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I don't know how they use it. I don't know the answer to that.
That's the thing, if it's there, why are we not using it?
Just former teachers, what?
She's a library, yeah.
Library,
Tech, yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea. I was like, wow, this is
Yeah,
awesome.
we've had it there for a couple of years. I don't know how they use it. I know they made me a pencil holder a couple of years ago. It's on my desk.
Yeah,
I don't know who made it, until they just sent it over from them. And
Yeah,
I sent them a thank you note. So,
I mean, that's like, thought line, right? If you have this, and you have it for a couple of years, only a couple of kids use it before school, oh yeah, that's a real waste of money, but look at the technology you could be teaching your kids to use.
yeah, we use them regularly. We have them in our tech lab here with 4 of them. We use them on a regular basis. And I was under the impression they were using it regularly there. I don't know the
Yeah.
answer to
I
that.
was honestly shocked. I walked in, I said, we have one of these?
Verbatim, she said we use it before school with a couple kids.
Yeah, I would have to ask. I've not had a conversation.
Well, then I would have asked her why.
I just don't.
I tried to, and she
You
walked
tried,
away.
and she walked away.
Because she knows that, all right, somebody's asking. But
Yeah.
that's how you're going to get the change that you want, is being the squeaky wheel at the level closest to.
She walked away.
Trust me, that's why I did it. She
Yeah.
didn't want to talk to me, because I felt like I was prying information, because I never saw
Yeah.
it before. It's like over there.
Yeah.
Who was this woman?
Yeah, Palmer.
Yeah.
One of the, she was
She's
on
the
library.
works in tech.
All right, then level up. I guess it's the Ellen.
She's not the librarian.
Yeah.
She's-
No, no, she's
an
a.
Go to Ellen and ask her.
Yeah.
You know.
It's a great machine.
I was actually going to ask her tomorrow when I got to work. I'd be like,
Yeah, do it.
Where is this?
Yeah, why did I just see this today?
Yeah.
Well, why did I just hear about it? Or better yet, why did I have an employee of the school tell me we use it a couple of times with kids before school? Why isn't everybody? What she said to you, just ask her and say, why is that?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer. I don't, I don't know the answer, and I try not to comment on, especially, like, I get people telling me we don't use it here. When I watch entire classes use it here. Now, does that mean every kid uses it here? I don't know.
Probably.
It depends on what tech courses they take, So people share with you what their perception of things are, and their perception might be completely accurate. I know what you're sharing with me is what I shared with you. I'm not saying that's not accurate. I'm just saying I don't know how it's used, or how they infuse it into what they do over there. I've seen it over there, I know it's there.
Yeah.
But I'll be happy to ask myself also, but you should too.
Absolutely.
I don't know the answer to it, but they've had them there for a few years.
She said something,
I
yeah.
think it's 3 or 4.
Yeah.
They can actually build them now. The 3D printers that they get can build more 3D printers.
Great.
Now I got my first.
Just what we need.
AI can bring itself.
Before I left the building, as an elementary principal, built by high school people.
Really building on them.
It's so fascinating, these kids would love it.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, is it possible then for the regular school board meeting at the end of the month, maybe to come back with some of those numbers for the discussion here? Just
Some of them
to
absolutely.
peel back.
I don't know if I can get.
And again, I could be wrong, if that 54, like you said, if it's more than a simple calculation of taking a number, dividing, understanding where we go to, but then also, again, understanding what that investment is, what those challenges
I'll
are.
look into it, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, I'll try to get it ready for you as soon as I possibly can.
Okay, can we, I guess, and we'll just table that discussion till the next meeting. Okay, thank you.
So due to the vagaries of the calendar, we have to adopt the budget tonight
Yes.
because it's due,
Our next board meeting is less
one day
than
late.
30 days before
The-
the budget vote.
Okay.
The state law requires it to be over 30 days, so it's either adopted today or we need to next month.
Okay, so I seek,
Just, just discussion. I'm going to abstain from voting. I've been on the board for a year now. Part of it was of curiosity about understanding the budgeting process. I've done my training through the New York State School Board Association. I was on the finance committee. I've attended meetings, heard the budget presentations. I want what's best for the students in the school, but I don't think I have enough information to really understand. And I want more presented to the community so they can make an informed decision, for what's in the best interest of the students and the community. So, thank you.
okay. Can I get a motion to adopt the budget of $35,629,000?
Make a motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstained?
Abstain.
Motion carries. Do we need a motion for adjournment? Because it was a...
Yes.
Okay, motion for adjournment?
Can you just share the,
Oh, I'm sorry. Petitions for anybody who wants to be on the school board, due on April 21st.
Correct. You can get them from me.
There will be one opening. Good night.
Who's vacating the position?
Patty, to get the packets in person at your office?
Yes, I can contact Megan if anybody's interested.
Now, a motion for adjournment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.